I said, fam, get swifty with it. Hopefully you've been doing the rating, the favourite, the commenting, and the sharing, and the subscribing, and all that lovely stuff, because we're on our way to 330, guys. We can do it. And then from that, I want to get to 350. I want to get 350 before the end of the year. It might not happen, but you got to have goals. Anyway, so this video, part 2. You're all going, hang on, part 2? You never said anything about part 1, little part 2. Well, yeah, I'll put my hand up, I admit that. I never thought I'd be making a part 2. Reason being is, when I made the original video, Sony had as yet not spoken about the controller. And then literally days later, Sony come out and go, hey, look! Wired's here, and they've got a whole bunch of information for you about what we're doing with the controller. You're like, wow. Call me Nostradamus. So, they're looking to improve upon this puppy. And apparently, this is not too dissimilar from what the guy tried out. What we have to remember is, demo controllers do look very different to what we get in the end. I mean, if you recall what the demo controller for PlayStation 4 looked like, very, very different indeed. Very, very different. I mean, so much chunkier and probably heavier than what we have now. And it does give pause for thought, considering that the gentleman from Wired did say that it was looking roughly the same, but a bit heavier. Now, part of what I think is the bit heavier would be the battery. Now, the battery is obviously going to be a bigger battery because it's going to do so much more. I mean, it's got the rumble to contend with, but I'll get to that later. So, you've got your bigger battery. Now, I would imagine that if it's going to be a bigger battery, it's going to have to be a moldable battery to sit in the case and take up as little space as possible, but to provide as much power as possible. Considering that you're going to have, you're still going to have the light bar on the front of it, because VR is still going to be part of it, and it's, that's part of how we, the PlayStation operates, is with that light bar. Now, will they be able to turn the light bar off? We'll have a functionality of like, the light bar comes on for when you need it, but when you don't need it, you don't have it. In your options, you can choose to have the light bar actually off. Right now, most of us out there who are savvy have our light bar at the lowest light setting possible, to save power. And with most of us, who are concerned with longevity of the battery in our DS4, have turned off the rumble, because most of us don't really notice the rumble anymore, but we're going to notice this new rumble because it's going to be adaptive. It's not just going to be it's going to actually change. It's going to form to the environment or the inputs given by the game. That I find alluring. However, it does also mean that it's going to consume more power. And with that power, we're getting USB-C. Now, USB-C charging is faster than micro USB. And what's nice with USB-C is it doesn't matter what way you put it in. There's no upside down, there's no right way up. You just slot that little puppy in and you've got nothing to worry about. You don't have to worry about breaking it or wearing out the port as much. You don't have to be, I'm not saying you don't have to be careful, but I'm saying you don't have to worry as much when putting it in. But with it being USB-C, that does make me wonder for data transfer rates. I believe USB-C has a faster data transfer rate than micro USB. I'm not sure, but I'm fairly certain it does. But if I'm wrong, tell me down below. Which means that for Pro controllers for next gen, that's where it's going to get really interesting, because the Pro controllers are going to have to put in all the stuff that's already going to be with the next generation controller, which for the moment we could call the DS5, but whether or not that new rumble controls are part of DualShock technology or a separate technology, as yet we do not know. So for a moment we'll just call it next generation controller. Okay? So for that next generation controller, when they do pro versions of that, and given that pro versions are always wired, so you plug them in, and the wire connection, you either have a stable wire or you have a wire that can come out, but you have a holder so it doesn't come out unless you actually want it to. There's no accidental disconnection. And the reason for that, if you don't know, which most of you I'm sure do, is so you don't have input lag. Because the input lag of a wire is far less than the input lag of Bluetooth. It's not exactly night and day, but if you're a pro guy, like an esports person, then you will notice it. Or if you're something like high level, sort of like Mortal Kombat genius, then you probably notice. But then if that's the case, then you probably have a fight stick, so potato. But we also have to think, right, if that's going to change pro controllers, what's it going to do for cheap third-party controllers? Because considering, right, that this puppy, right, or its predecessor, might remove the touchpad for a touch screen. Now, you out there, some of you, have probably heard the podcast that myself and Tobe Gaming did, where we actually discussed the idea of there being a touch screen in the DS5 or next generation controller, whichever you prefer. And we were like, yeah, this could be interesting, because there's still a lot of games on PlayStation 4 that did use the touchpad. Not enough did, but there are a fair few. And consider there is going to be backwards compatibility pretty much confirmed for PlayStation 5 to PlayStation 4 titles. That does mean stuff like Dreams and other games that use the touchpad will need to have that functionality there so you can use it. Even if it is just the map button, the fact of the matter is that touchpad is a part of some games and will continue to be a part of those games because that's just what it did. So the touch screen would pass that functionality on to itself. But I also believe that the touchscreen would have other functionalities. Now, those functionalities that some have discussed have been, UI elements, messaging, alerts from the system, stuff like that. Possibly even like, save here, instead of auto saving, instead of manual saving on your screen, manual save on your controller, things like that. But I also posited the notion on the podcast that me and Tobe had of minigames on your pad, where if you're waiting to get an online lobby, you have a little 8-bit sprite game that's to do with the game you're playing. Or while you're if you're in a big battle royale situation and you've died fairly early on, then you've got a little thing to occupy yourself with on your pad if you don't fancy watching everybody else win. But where I also think it'd be handy, if you had, apart from that, you could also have little multiplayer games while you're loading levels or loading races, with people on the couch next to you. You could have four controllers, 4 guys in the room, and while they're waiting for the online race to load or whatever, or they're playing a football game, and while you're waiting for everybody to come online, you could have a little bit of early pairs on the gate on their pad or whatever else. Could be interesting. But what I think would be one of the best applications for that touchscreen in the middle of your controller. Say you're having trouble with a game. What's that one thing a lot of us do these days? We go to YouTube. We pick up our phone, we pick up a tablet, or we even PlayStation button our way out of the game, go to the YouTube app, find a video, watch the video, and PlayStation controller sales in and out of YouTube and in and out of the game, backwards and forwards, blah 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 blah, you know, just to get an idea of what it is we're trying to do next. What about if that YouTube video was on your actual controller? It's right here. I think that would be a little slice of wonderful. And if perhaps, I don't know, maybe if you could do video messaging, bring back video messaging and put it on the controller. You know, the camera would obviously be up there and that would record you, but you could look down and see your pal, you know, and you could, you know, that would be a great way of like sorting out team chat, you know, sort of like people could actually say things and that, or people could, you know, like bring up maps in games, and like, you know, when you see people playing team sports or football or American football, whatever, and the coach has got up big diagrams, you could draw on the map on your pad, you know, where you want people to attack, you know. So like you go, you know, you go around here, you go around there, you go in with the rocket launcher here, I'll be here with the grenades, you know. You could do that live in game, you know, or before you go and attack in a particular bit. You'd be in like an area in like the Division 3 on PlayStation 5 in 2 or 3 years time, and you could strategize on the map screen on your controller about what bits everybody's to hit and how you're meant to hit it. There's possibilities are wild, absolutely wild, if there's a touchscreen. But of course, with it being a touchscreen and with it being that rumble, then we go back to power. Now, obviously, you're going to have a bigger battery. And it's going to have to be a moldable battery, so it doesn't take up, you know, too much room for being a larger battery. Because the battery inside the DS4 is actually quite a small battery. So, with that in mind, a moldable battery is going to have to be the option to have that greater power capacity for all that extra functionality. However, with all that will increase the weight, which is probably what the guy from Wired was saying when he said the controller felt heavier. So that meant there's probably a larger battery in it. If there's a larger battery in it, then even though they didn't say there was a touchscreen, that could mean there might actually be a touchscreen on the controller. Now this is speculation, obviously. All of this is. You know, I'm just throwing out ideas, you know, and seeing where they land. You know, throwing past against the wall and seeing what sticks. However, this is really interesting stuff. So, if we have that larger battery and it's moldable, that does mean that will rise the price, because not only will the touchscreen raise the price, but a larger capacity battery, and it being a moldable battery, that would raise the price. But it would have to, at least, even if it's not a moldable battery, it would have to be a bigger battery to deal with all the extra functionality of that special new rumble technology and the possible touchscreen. Because you're not going to want to turn those off, because that's going to deaden your immersion of the games. We turn off rumble the now because it kills the battery. We turn off the light the now, or we dim the light the now because it kills the battery. If the light can be more adaptive, there's like you only have the light on when it's needed for a particular part of a game, you know, or for VR functionality, or for signing into the console as we do now. Fair enough. But if the rest of the time the light knows enough to turn itself off, then that would be helpful to battery life. But then the actual surface of the controller is something we have to talk about. Now, this grippy surface, or sort of grippier surface, on the underside of the controller is brilliant. I loved that they introduced this, but I think it could be a touch grippy, just a wee bit, because after a while, after holding a pad for a long time, you do sort of wear it down a little bit. You know, it does get not sort of like worn flat, but if you listen to the middle bit, okay, now if I scratch the handle bits where I've got the same bit, you hear that tone difference. middle, side. There is a little bit of wear down, so the middle bit is still uber grippy, but the handles aren't. So they need to work on that. And I think that self-same texture, right, could very well be applied to the triggers. Because if the triggers are going to be rumbling, or providing feedback, then they're going to have a little bit of a deeper curve, possibly a little bit longer, and employ this texture. Because the last thing you want to be doing is trying to accelerate up a stony, muddy hill, and the trigger's reacting to that stony, muddy hill in like a MotorStorm-esque game, and then your finger comes flying off because it's rumbling and it's slipping, and your hand is warm and possibly a little sweaty, and no. So that has to be addressed. And along with that, the sacred symbols, the face buttons. Now, we've had these be shiny and slidey forever. Now, do they need to be grippy? One part of me would say yes, for the reasons I've given. But then again, you have to have that ease of movement of sliding between the controls. I mean, we've all had those things where like you slide between the controls to make things happen. And with all of us older gamers know the trick of wrapping your thumb in your t-shirt and going across the controls real fast for like sports titles and stuff. So I don't know if they'll be able to do anything to the face buttons, but the sticks this time they have to get the sticks right out the gate. Now for me, I never had a problem with stick wear till a good long time, but that's because I got one of the other controllers. Because what a lot of people don't know is when the PlayStation 4 first came out, there were several companies involved in making the DualShock 4, and there was about 3 or 4 different suppliers for the actual sticks. So it was effectively a lottery as to how good your sticks were for your launch model PlayStation 4. Luckily, I got one of the good sets of sticks, so they lasted a really, really long time. I still have my original controller over there, but I don't use it as much because eventually, just through wear and tear and usage after a couple of years, the sticks did actually start to get cracky in that, and it didn't feel nice under thumb. And I did put covers on them, but the covers feel weird, so that's player 2. I know. Ooh, the dud controller. It's not the dud controller, I just don't like the feel of the covers, but they still work. It's still perfectly functional pad. So they have to make sure to get the rubber right first time out the gate. This sort of convex and concave design at the same time, that's definitely a keeper. That is definitely a keeper. This general shape, this width, the shape of these arms, this slightly bulbous end, this ergonomical curve for the top where your fingers rest, all of this is brilliant. The little microphone, great. Oh, sorry, speaker, I mean, great. Now they're talking about adding a microphone into this. I don't know if that's entirely necessary, because considering that there's going to be VR functionality baked in, or at least big part of PlayStation 5, then that would lead me to believe that there will be another separately sold camera unit for PlayStation 5, as there was with the last 2 generations of PlayStation. Both cameras I bought and enjoyed and used extensively. In fact, this particular camera up here right now, which I'm recording this video with because I'm using Share Factory, is awesome. I love it. I mean, I ordered it day one because, I saw the potential of it. My gamer gut told me to get this camera. The only thing I miss about is video conferencing. I actually quite enjoyed video conferencing on PlayStation 3. It was a good thing to do. Admittedly, I did once video conference with a guy in Australia, and wow, lag. But then that was early thousands internet, so you know. But yeah, it's sort of like, so a microphone in this could be an idea, but we all, you know, a lot of us serious gamers, even if we don't have the camera, we've got a headset, you know. And I really hope that my Platinum headset works with my PlayStation 5, because I spent a fair chunk of change on that. And admittedly, yes, eventually the original Plus headset worked with PlayStation 4, but that was only like about a year and a half in, and that was with a patch. It's like, we all remember that horrible mono headset that came with the PlayStation 4. Don't bother with that, Sony. Please, God, don't bother with that. But I'm straying away from the controller talk. So, all in all, I think that we're on for something quite special here. USB-C, easier to plug, faster power recharging, bigger battery to allow for greater things, possible removal of the touch pad for a touch screen, and therefore greater functionality, possibly even social media functionality. You know, tweet about your game, launch screenshots for your game from your pad. I like that, you know. Maybe even like Snapchat or Instagram, you know. You know, call up the Instagram app on your pad, snap the picture, include, if you have the camera, then include a little bit of face grab of you going, "Yeah!" You know, as a trophy comes up, or as you've made a critical kill, you know, that goes to Instagram, all from your pad. There are many wonderful, interesting, great possibilities from, and yeah, it's just, so the possibilities are endless, you know, to me. You know, and probably other PlayStation fans out there have come up with other crazy ideas. Sony's probably come up with some equally crazy ideas. Now, what ideas they'll implement, how the next version of this is going to look, is anybody's. But yeah, interesting times ahead. Maybe in another video I'll discuss the look of the next PlayStation. But you know what? In all actuality, it mostly doesn't matter. And I'll tell you for why. It sits under your telly. It sits in an entertainment centre. I basically don't see my PlayStation 4. It's down there, it's in the entertainment centre, and it's not some hidden from view, it's just not on show. It's not like out in the centre, you know, like for all the world to see. So it mostly doesn't matter what it looks like. It matters what it does. And, well, how much it costs. Anyway, guys, I hope you found this little discussion piece illuminating. And I, of course, hope to see you in further videos if you've come here as a new person. And I will flash the card behind me of hashtag support your Scottish YouTubers. And I will end this video in the manner of which I always end the videos of, aye, no bother.